If you're watching this video, you probably know it's fight week for Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather. And I'm sure we will cover that elsewhere on the channel. Regular viewers will know we do a podcast every Wednesday. Of course, McGregor Mayweather is going to be a topic that comes up on that podcast. I may do a solo video with some final thoughts, or maybe even some post-weigh-in thoughts on the fight as well as we get nearer to fight day. But in this video, I'm going to talk about something slightly different, that's slightly departed from the WWE style circus that is Floyd versus Conor McGregor. I'm going to talk about a fight in the lower weight divisions that is one for the hardcore boxing fans, that's one for the boxing purists. At the time of filming, this fight hasn't been completely confirmed, but there are substantial rumours that it is very likely to be made next. And that is Guillermo Rigondeaux versus Vasyl Lomachenko. Two guys who feature very, very highly in many boxing fans' pound for pound lists. Two guys who have leading amateur pedigrees and really represent the technical elite of the boxing game, if you like. And I commend this fight. I commend this fight massively. Both of these guys are guys who I have been, I don't want to say I've been sceptical, because I think that's the wrong word to use, but these are guys who I have not been as drawn into the excitement about them as some hardcore boxing fans. And for me, when you've got guys who are technical fighters, whose styles appear to the purists, when you have got guys who are fighting in the lower weight divisions and maybe are not the most marketed fighters out there, you really need a good dance partner to make them exciting fighters and to build their profile to the level that it deserves. And I believe that this fight, Guillermo Rigondeaux versus Vasyl Lomachenko, can propel both of these guys in terms of their names to the next level. In terms of the fight itself, I think, addressing the elephant in the room straight away, Vasyl Lomachenko is a substantially bigger man than Rigondeaux. Vasyl Lomachenko has been campaigning at 130 pounds, and there has been substantial talk about him fighting in higher weight classes. I've heard conversation over the years about Lomachenko-Pacquiao, Lomachenko-Crawford, more recently Lomachenko-Garcia. I'm not saying any of those fights were actively going to get made, and any of those fights were even likely, but those are the kind of names and weight divisions that Lomachenko's been been talked about, if you like. Guillermo Rigondeaux, however, for me, is a substantially smaller man. He's a guy who's been operating in the super bantamweight division, and I think the general consensus, should I say, is that he's actually very, very small for that weight class, and he could be fighting even below the weight class. Potentially at bantamweight. He's a very, very small guy for the weight. So I think that's something to factor in. You've got Guillermo Rigondeaux, who's a bantamweight or a super bantamweight, dependent on your point of view, versus a guy in Vasyl Lomachenko, who's been campaigning at a higher weight class, and not just one higher weight class, not just featherweight, but he's had his last fight, his last two fights, last 2 or 3 fights, I think, at super featherweight, and he's not classed as small from that division. So I think the size difference is a key consideration going into this fight. Another key consideration for me is the punch output and volume difference. Long-time viewers will know I'm a big fan of Richard Dwyer's YouTube channel, and I watched a video ages ago now. This was probably 3 or 4 years ago that Dwyer made, but it stuck with me, where Dwyer made the argument that Leo Santa Cruz would beat Guillermo Rigondeaux. And at the time, Dwyer got a huge amount of stick for making that argument, and everyone was saying that Rigondeaux was a different level to Leo Santa Cruz. But I actually quite liked Dwyer's reasoning in that fight. He reasoned that Santa Cruz was the substantially bigger man who threw up to 100 punches around, sometimes even more. And a guy like Rigondeaux, who's a counter puncher, who's a low volume, high quality guy, would struggle against a guy as young, strong, big, and continuous against Leo Santa Cruz. I think bringing Vasyl Lomachenko to the equation would be a continuation of that example, but to the next degree. Vasyl Lomachenko is operating at super featherweight, which is even more than Leo Santa Cruz. Vasyl Lomachenko, maybe he doesn't throw quite as many punches as Leo Santa Cruz, but we can agree that he is a potentially a high output fighter. And I think the other thing to factor in is Vasyl Lomachenko is a far more technically refined fighter than Leo Santa Cruz, who'd actually be a lot harder to hit and a lot harder to find than Leo Santa Cruz. So, yeah, I think if this fight were to be made, there'd be a lot of difficulties for Rigondeaux. Sure, Rigondeaux is this highly regarded amateur technician. He's a very, very good counterpuncher. He's very difficult to find. He's extremely accurate. He's got excellent timing. But we have weight classes in boxing for a reason. And when you're fighting someone who's so much bigger than you, when you're fighting someone who's got so much higher volume than you, you're really, really, really going to need a very, very substantial technique advantage and pedigree advantage, if you like, in order to get the better of them. If we look at when Floyd fought Canelo Alvarez, it's not a directly comparable thing, but Floyd was much smaller than Canelo. He was much older than Canelo. Floyd was able to show such technical superiority in the fight. He was kind of able to get around those things. But whether Rigondeaux or whether anyone would be able to show, boxing technique and that sort of thing far in excess of someone as accomplished as Vasyl Lomachenko is an open question, and for me, it's difficult. Lomachenko's lost in his career. Sure, he lost to Salido, but he's improved since then. He's improved substantially, and the kind of roughhouse tactics that Salido used are probably not going to be implemented by a smaller guy like Rigondeaux, who relies on his own technical ability and his sort of counterpunching and accuracy and that kind of things. As for Rigondeaux, I've always been slightly sceptical of some of the esteem he's been held in as a pro. If you look at Rigondeaux's resume, it is debatable how strong the resume is. His famous win came back in 2013. Wow, over 4 years ago. It feels like yesterday when he beat Nonito Donaire. Since then, yeah, sure, he's beaten some contenders. Joseph Agbeko, Amagasa, Jazza Dickens, Flores in his last fight. Has he beaten world-class names? Is his resume even as strong as Vasyl Lomachenko? I know Lomachenko's had less fights and Lomachenko's taken a loss, but it depends how high you rate that, that Nonito Donaire win, which I've always thought, it's a bit up for discussion that. Lomachenko's not fought a bad level of opposition. Jason Sosa, Roman Martinez, Nicholas Walters, Gary Russell Jr., etc. So, even from a resume perspective, I think Rigondeaux is behind Lomachenko. I think from a size perspective, he's behind. Rigondoux's an older guy. He's 36 years old, and he's been inactive. He fought only once in 2015. He fought only once in 2016. He's only fought once so far in 2017. So you've got an inactive guy coming into his late 30s, who's a small guy, against Vasyl Lomachenko, a guy with all sorts of momentum, 2 fantastic performances under his belt already in 2017, a substantially younger man, a substantially higher output fighter, and a guy who's been operating at a higher weight class. I really don't see this as a good matchup for Guillermo Rigondeaux. I saw a poll on Twitter that says, had 80% of people thinking that Lomachenko would win this fight. For me, I think that's an accurate representation. I don't think this is a good matchup for Rigondeaux. I understand why he has to take it. I know it's very difficult for him to find opponents. I can imagine he's not the easiest guy to match, and I understand that at the weight classes there are a shortage of fights for you to make big opportunity in terms of financials and big legacy opportunity, and I guess this does provide that if he's able to spring an upset. I think at his age, having been so inactive, despite all of his technical capabilities, he's going up against someone who, in a different way, is equally accomplished. And I think there's too much against Guillermo Rigondeaux here. We've seen him hurt once or twice in fights before, notably by a bigger guy in Amagasa, and I think with the technique and output of Lomachenko, I would really expect Lomachenko to come out superior in this fight. And being frank, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if the fight ends in a stoppage for Lomachenko's favour. I just think Rigondeaux is going to be totally outgunned in terms of volume, size, youth, momentum, etc. Early thoughts video, we can discuss the fight more if and when it gets made. It may already have been made, I need to double check that. We may discuss it on the podcast, but of course we'll discuss it before the fight actually takes place. But let me know your thoughts, guys. Drop your comments in the section below. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button, please do subscribe. Many thanks for tuning in.